Further amendments to the bill. Mr. Boyer.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk. It would be Boyer number 11.
Chairman, I reserve a point of order.
Without objection, the Boyer amendment number 11 will be considered as read. The chair will note that there's a reservation of a point of order by the gentlelady from Colorado, and Mr. Boyer is now recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer this amendment to address my strong concerns that the FDA is not the agency to burden with tobacco regulation today for two main reasons. First, regulation of tobacco runs counter to the FDA's expertise in providing for the safety and efficacy of the nation's drugs and devices. Tobacco is an inherently dangerous product, and the FDA has no experience regulating such product. Frankly, it's counter to their culture. Secondly, the FDA continues to fail to perform its current duties, whether they are inspecting our nation's food manufacturing facilities or foreign drug manufacturing facilities. Matter of fact, I want to recognize our respected dear friend and colleague, Congressman John Dingell, for his efforts with his food and drug safety bill, and he has long championed the FDA in bringing their toes to the line. As Chairman Waxman, Congressman Dingell, Congressman Markey, Congressman Pallone, Congressman DeLauro stated along with Senators Kennedy, Leahy, and Dodd in January of 2008, quote, "Today the FDA is an agency that is all but starved of resources. Experts from every affected sector agree that this desperate funding situation has rendered the FDA unable to protect the American public from even the most basic threats, including contaminated food, tainted and dangerous drugs, and faulty medical devices," end quote. So once again, I compliment John Dingell and his efforts with his food and drug safety bill, and I look forward to working with him in that endeavor. My question to my colleagues here today is, do you believe that the FDA is in a place to take on the multi-million-dollar tobacco industry? Over the past several years, this committee and others have held numerous hearings to determine what needs to be fixed at FDA so we can assure the American people that their food and their drugs and their medical devices are safe. As we talk about forcing the FDA to juggle a multi-billion-dollar tobacco industry, foreign drug manufacturing facilities are going mostly uninspected. The FDA's surveillance over the drugs on our market is inadequate. Hundreds of thousands of unregulated, potentially harmful drugs are streaming into our international mail facilities every day. As we consider this bill, we must not forget our discussions over the past years about the FDA's lack of resources, the inability to fulfill its missions. My amendment will move all tobacco regulation responsibilities out of the FDA, but will keep it under the jurisdiction of the Department of Health and Human Services and create the Tobacco Harm Reduction Center. This portion, which I'm offering here today, was in the substitute for which was earlier defeated. This movement reflects the understanding that tobacco regulation is a public health issue while ensuring the protection of the FDA's current mission. I ask for your support of my amendment and to create a dedicated federal agency devoted solely to tobacco regulation and not further the strain on the overburdened FDA. I note last year, the committee, we had a letter from the Secretary of Health and Human Services dated July 20th of 2008. It was addressed to Congressman Joe Barton from Michael Levitt. In the letter itself, in the third paragraph, it says that in referencing the bill in which we're marking up here today, quote, "The bill will unfortunately undermine one of the nation's premier public health and regulatory institutions." That's a pretty strong statement from from Michael Levitt, who is then the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So, Chairman Waxman, you and I have had this discussion before. I know that you are firm in your beliefs with regard to the FDA. We had a discussion on how long do we think that it would take in order to stand up an agency. So whether it's the FDA that accepts this responsibility or it's another agency within Health and Human Services, it's going to take time, and I recognize that. But I think it would be better served the country's interest if we had a separate agency within HHS, and for that I'm asking for consideration. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Mr. Pallone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I oppose the amendment, and this is, from what I can see, taking part of your original substitute-like amendment out and just referencing the FDA part. And I sort of spoke on it before, but I want to say this. I mean, look, you can take various approaches to the FDA. There are some that just think the FDA should be abolished and we should get rid of it and replace it entirely. There are others like myself that think it is a very effective agency on many fronts because it has the kind of scientific expertise and the regulatory experience that would be effective in regulating tobacco products, and that the real problem is a lack of resources. I feel that I'm not looking to get rid of the FDA or not have them do the things that they're best at doing, and I think tobacco falls within this. They regulate foods, drugs, cosmetics, even pet food. Tobacco is certainly something that they're perfectly capable, and I think the best agency to deal with this. The difference here is that we do provide with the user fee and the funding in this bill the resources for them to do it, which I don't think is the case, unfortunately, in some of the other areas. We do need more appropriations. We need more money for them. Obviously, if you look at the bill that myself and Congressman Dingell and Stupak have sponsored that deals with food safety, among other things, that's a way of doing it, effectively doing the same thing for food safety. So I think the answer here is let's give them the resources, which we do under this legislation. Let's look at what they do on food and cosmetics and other things as we do in the other bill and give them the resources. Let's not just say that we need a new agency. And in any case, the issue of whether or not there should be a new agency, I think, should be looked at separately. It shouldn't be done under the auspices of this bill because we haven't had enough time to deal with it. It makes sense right now to put it under this bill and provide them with the resources, which is what this legislation does.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my reservation.
Gentlelady withdraws her reservation. Gentleman from New Jersey yields back the balance of his time. The vote now comes on the Booyer amendment. All those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments?
Chairman, may I have a recorded vote on that at an appropriate time?
Gentleman requests a recorded vote and that it be put off until the other recorded votes are taken.
Thank you.
Is that any objection to that request?
Reserving the right to object.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton.
Reserving the right to object, and I will not object, but I was not in the room when the deal was made to roll votes. I do oppose rolling votes in committee. I think members should be here. The longer we do that, the less member participation you're going to have. But since it was a unanimous consent request when I was out of the room, I'm not going to object today. But I just want the minority members to know that as a general principle, I oppose that. And after today's markup, we'll have a discussion with the chairman about it. But on this, I have no opposition to Mr. Boyer's recommendation.
Without objection, the unanimous consent request is agreed to, and the chair would also ask unanimous consent that all rolled votes take place at the end of the markup when we're ready to proceed to prior to final passage. Without objection, that'll be the order.